Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. My name is Emma, and I have Scott with me today, and we're going to be talking about the invisible four-letter word. But before we get to what that four-letter word is and all the questions that I have for you, can you give everybody an introduction?
Yes, thank you, Emma. My name is Scott Shumway. I'm the author of the book, The Invisible Four-Letter Word, The Secret to Getting What You Really Want in Life. It's a book about how you can realize your goals and how to actually go out and get them. The most important thing that I like to tell people is that from the moment you wake up in the morning until basically when your head hits the pillow and you fall asleep, an invisible force leads you throughout the day. And coming to know, understand what I call recognize, and then be able to regulate that invisible force can help you really get anything that you want in your life. And so that's my goal in life, is to help people learn to recognize and regulate that invisible force.
Well, I'm excited for this conversation. The last time that we talked, we had plenty to discuss. But a lot of this idea of getting what we want and
Mhm.
how to kind of regulate that force comes down to also how we interact with other people.
Yes.
And change has been a big part of your career and helping encourage other people to adopt change. So, where I want to start the conversation before we fully get to this idea of like recognizing and everything else is, you used this analogy when we were talking first that change resistance is really similar to being afraid of the dark. Can you talk us through that idea to kind of get the conversation started?
Yes, yes. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So, as we go through life, sometimes we are, in fact, most of the time, we are uncertain about like what the future holds. I mean, nobody can predict the future, right? And so, as we make decisions, as we especially change decisions, there is there is something within us that causes us to resist change, and it's the exact same thing that causes us as human beings to be afraid of the dark. So fear of the dark and fear of change are actually the same exact thing. And I'll wrap it up in a little story. So I love to go backpacking. And one time I took one of my grandsons backpacking, and he was just deathly afraid of the dark. As soon as the sun went down, he's like, Grandpa, what if there's wolves out there? What if there's coyotes? What if there's a bear? What if, what if, what if, what if? And the whole reason why he had fear is because he couldn't see what was out there in the dark. He couldn't, I mean, beyond the light of the campfire, it was unknown. He had no idea. And so his mind played all kinds of tricks on him. And he was thinking that there were bad things that were out there that were going to eat him. Well, that's exactly what happens with change. So change, we can't see beyond what, I mean, when you create a change strategy, you really don't know what's going to happen, because when you're doing the same thing over and over, the repeatability of that and the ability to know what's going to happen, you're pretty confident because you've done it before and you know the results that are going to happen again. But when you change something, people in that change, within the change, are going to be somewhat resistant to it because they're afraid of what they don't know. What is the change going to happen? Am I going to keep my job? Am I going to lose my job? Is this going to be successful? Is it going to fail? They don't know. They've got those things in their head that are just playing with their mind, and they're uncertain. And so uncertainty is the same thing that causes fear of the dark as it does any other change management program.
So now it's time to finally unleash this four-letter word for everybody, but then also talk about how it plays into this idea of change.
Yeah.
And specifically, how, if we can tap into the four-letter word, how that helps us get people over that hump of uncertainty. So can you start by like the grand reveal and
Oh,
then
yeah. So
talking about how it plays into change?
yes, in the grand review, we've said it a whole bunch of times. You could probably go back and count them. The word that we've said repeatedly already in this podcast, the word is want, W-A-N-T. Those are the four letters, because we only want what we want. We want to be certain. We want to know what's happening. If an employee doesn't know what's happening and wants to know what's happening, they're going to kind of freak out because they want to know. Nobody doesn't want to know. Nobody wants to be left in the dark, just like the analogy. Nobody likes that because that brings fear and trepidation. So at the beginning, when I said that there's an invisible force that draws us from the moment we wake up to the moment we go to sleep, it is our wants. And I'll take you through a typical day. Your alarm goes off and you reach over and you hit the snooze button because you want to sleep in. And then your mind begins to roll and you said, no, I want to get out of bed because I've got some things to do today. I want to look good, so I want to take a shower. And your wants actually play with your head all day long. There comes a point where you want to eat. So you stop working and you go eat. And every decision you make throughout the day is governed by the word want, because you want what you want. Now, going back to this whole idea of change, some people don't like change because they want to have certainty in their future. And so as a leader, when you're leading a group of individuals or an organization and you have a change effort, because you have to change. Every organization has got to change from day to day, from month to month. Because if you stay the same, somebody else is going to catch up to you, right? So everything we do strategically is about change. You have to want to share the change. You need to let people know what the change is. You need to help them understand how the change is going to affect them, both positive and negative, because people want to know. The decisions that they're making as they're going forward are based upon their wants. They want to be comfortable. They want to know what the future holds, and they don't want to be fearful. And if they are fearful and they don't know what's happening and they can't get what they want, then bad things are going to happen. And I bring all those up in my book, The Invisible Four-Letter Word. I talk a lot about what happens to a person when they don't get what they want. They become what I call upside down. And when you're upside down, then you don't get what you want. Negative emotions run around inside you. Then you become irrational. You justify certain things that aren't right, leaving you in a powerless position. But if people get what they want, 5 things take a hold of them. They're pursuing their wants. They have positive emotions. They become more rational and creative, and they become powerful. Now, when you get a whole group of people harmonizing together and becoming a harmonious group of individuals who want the same thing, including change, it'll take your organization to a whole new level.
So then you mentioned the idea of the importance of understanding this concept as a leader. And one of the things that I will talk about until the cows come home is the idea of how important a strong vision is. And earlier, you mentioned this idea of being able to recognize our wants and then regulate those wants and learning to regulate them. So can you talk about how, as a leader, recognizing what we actually want and then being able to regulate those wants plays into this idea of being able to put forward a strong vision that actually inspires change?
Yes, excellent. This is a really good point. So I have seen organizations where the leader doesn't really know what they want. They haven't recognized. So you're exactly right, Emma. So the whole idea here is to uncover what's invisible. The invisible 4-letter word is want. And oftentimes we go through life and our wants will lead us from one moment to the next. But we haven't recognized why we do the things that we do. And so step number 1 is learning to recognize our wants, make them visible, come to an understanding. It's like, why do I do the things I do? Why am I making the decisions? Let me tell you a quick story. So I worked with an organization, and the leader, the CEO of the company, didn't really have that vision statement. He kind of knew what he wanted, but he hadn't set it in stone. And every day when you came to work, today you would go one way. When you came to work the next day, you may be doing something different. And the next day, maybe something completely different. And there was such a lack of vision of what really was wanted, where we were going, what was the new product? Did we have a date set for that product? How are we going to accomplish it? Who was in charge of it? Because none of those things were set. Every day that we just meandered around and never really got to a point where the corporation could make the money that it should have been making, because they made a remarkable product. So once you learn to recognize and can establish your wants, then number two, you can regulate them. Like a regulator on a gas fire pit. You can turn it up, you can turn it down, you can turn it off, you can turn it on. But being able to regulate our wants, there's a little more to it than that. But learning to recognize your wants is the first step. And then to be able to control them or regulate them is the second. And once you do that, and with everybody else, understanding the vision that you're providing for the want of the organization, your wants, the wants of the group, then everybody together can regulate those wants and get you to the destination, which is what you really, really want. Oftentimes profitability, camaraderie, creativity. Those are the things that you want, which will lead to profitability in the future.
Thank you so much for joining me for the conversation, Scott, and for everybody who watched. If you haven't already, I am partway through, because you and I just met a couple of weeks ago, through the book. I didn't get it all the way through before the interview, but I am making my way through the book. And anybody who wants to read it alongside me, will put a link in the description for you to get your hands on it. And certainly Scott and I will be having more conversations in the future, so stay tuned. But thank you everybody for joining us, and have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Leading Change. If you like what you saw, be sure to come back on a weekly basis and subscribe for more expert interviews focused on digital transformation, change management, and emerging technologies.